everyone, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books, and today I am bringing you a bit of a philosophical video which is talking about something that I became curious about in myself when I noticed, and that is I recently read a book that I didn't track. Now, I have a couple of different ways in which I track my reading. I have a journal, which looks like this. I've shown this journal before. I keep a monthly kind of track of the books that I read, and I write little reviews for myself in there. I also keep a big list as part of that as well. And this is what my list currently looks like. However, because at the time of filming it's the beginning of April, and I haven't finished any other books yet in April, but I'm just about to set up the next month. But in March I read a book, in addition to these 7 books, that I didn't include in there. And I was thinking about it for some time as to why I hadn't done that. And I want to talk about it and talk about some of the other things that I sometimes read and don't include. So that's my main way that I track things, but I also have social media. So I have on my phone, I use a story graph. I also keep a Goodreads for now. I probably will at some point finish up with Goodreads just because it's an Amazon linked thing nowadays, and I don't really want to have anything to do with it, really. I kind of just keep it up because a lot of people in the bookish community are still using it. So yeah, I kind of maintain it, but I'm just copy pasting across what I've done in the story graph, so it's not a whole lot of extra work. Anyway, I haven't included this book there either. And I want to kind of like talk about it with you, and I'm curious to know what other people do in the different places in which they track their reading, and whether you include everything that you read in there, and what things you might not include. So the book in question was Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon. It's the second book in the Ice Planet Barbarian series. I read the first book of it, and I did track that book. It was a couple of years ago now. I definitely talked about it on this channel. And yet, for this book, the second book in this series, I didn't include it in any of my tracking, and I was not planning on talking about it on the channel. I've already filmed my wrap-up. It will already be up by the time this video goes up. For March, I didn't include it in my wrap-up. And I think I have a bit of a, I don't know, interrogating that idea of like, why do I not want to include this in my wrap-up, in any of my tracking? And I guess my first thought was, people know, if you know what the Ice Planet Barbarians series is, you will know that it is essentially sci-fi romance, but it is quite spicy. It's a spicy sci-fi romance where there are big blue aliens, and there's a lot of explicit content in those books. So my first thought was, like, am I embarrassed about reading essentially smut? And when I thought about it some more, I realized I don't think I am embarrassed by it. Obviously, I'm talking about it on a video with you. I'm not hiding the fact that I occasionally will read a smutty romance book. I don't do it too often, but it's a thing that I do sometimes. And then I wondered if the reason I felt that I could talk about it the first time but not this time was because maybe people would interpret my reading of it as, you know, just curiosity. But I've read the first one now. Now I'm reading the second one in the series. So maybe I was worried that people would think a particular way about me because I'm reading the second book in this series. And I don't think that's it either, because I also haven't included it in my private reading journal. I've not listed it there, which is just for me for the most part. So I don't think that's it either. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not really. Then I thought about, like, is it something that it says about me as a reader? Because the majority of the books that I read are, and if you watched my quarterly check-in video that I made a few weeks ago, you will have seen me talking about the most common books that are that I have read so far this year, which is a reflection of what it is most years, are literary fiction and poetry. Those are the two most common types of books that I read, which, if you think about the style of book, is very different to a sci-fi romance that is particularly smutty. So maybe there's some kind of, like, you know, something deep inside me that makes me think, you know, it's embarrassing to also be reading this. But then, you know, I've read lots of stuff that I have tracked in the past that isn't those two genres of book. I've read other romances, some that I've really loved, some that I've thought were kind of so. And generally speaking, I don't have any problem with that. So again, I'm not 100% sure why I didn't want to track this book. I didn't include it in my wrap-up. I didn't talk about it. I didn't even include it in my private journal. But I did read it. It's a book that I have read. I don't know. It might be something that's kind of complex. It could be really simple. But I just don't really know why, 100% why, I decided not to track this book. And then that got me thinking, are there any other books that I don't track? And the answer is yes. There are other things that I read that I don't track. I have two books here that are books I am partway through that I have not included, and I probably won't include in my wrap-ups whenever I finish them. One is this one, which I have actually spoken about. I spoke about this book when I hauled it last year. It's called Revenge of the Librarians, Cartoons by Tom Gould. And it is, as expected, like a strip cartoon style. And it's quite amusing. I'm almost done with it. But I'm not going to include it. And I think the reason for this one, not including this one, is that I don't necessarily want to include cartoons anymore in my reading tracking. I have done it in the past. There's been some years where I've done that, but at the moment I don't feel like I want to do that. So that might give you a hint as to how I'm landing. This book is a children's book, Spud and Snowball and the Fancy Fish by Judith Russell. I read this with my sister's child, and again, it was great. It's a sort of almost graphic novel style with a little bit of just, you know, it's basically a short chapter book with a lot of, you know, big graphics, etc. Again, I have included stuff like this in the past when I've read it, but I'm not currently including children's books of this nature anymore. I have included some, like, novels, children's novels. For example, do I have one nearby? I do not. I had one that I included a couple of months back that was like a novel, but it was more text heavy than this one. However, there are other books that I do read that are not as text heavy. For example, sometimes I will read a graphic novel. They're usually not as text heavy as a novel, a regular novel, and I do include those. So I think where I'm landing on this is that when I'm tracking the books that I read, I have particular goals in mind and thoughts in mind about what I'm tracking, I guess. And I think that that fluctuates over time. As I said, I have included some of this stuff in the past, and I think the times when I've included this stuff has been when I have been extending the goal in terms of how many books I want to read in the year. For the last few years, I have been setting the same reading goal every year in terms of the number of books I want to read at 52. And it's a goal that I have not had any trouble getting to over that time. Initially, I reset that goal when I hit it and I extended it, but I have stopped doing that because I think I actually don't want to put that kind of pressure on myself to keep reading. Like the seasons of my life, sometimes I have a lot of time to read and other times I don't, or sometimes I have a lot of energy to read and sometimes I don't. So I'm comfortable with the goal that I've been setting for myself in terms of number of books. I don't feel the need to fill that quicker than I do. I'm happy with the way that things are going. So I've kept that same goal for a long time now. So I don't feel the need to read fast books to make my total bigger and bigger. I'm not ever aiming to get higher than 52. Anything above that is just a bonus for me, and I'm not going to push myself to get to a bigger number. So I think that's part of it. I'm not feeling like compelled to include every little thing that I read. Other stuff I read that I don't include is like articles and, you know, if I'm reading a part of a textbook or something like that. I don't include a lot of like academic reading that I've done. Unless, you know, I think it's something like if I've read it cover to cover, I might consider it. But generally, because I'm dipping in and out, I wouldn't consider that I've read that book in its entirety. Yeah, so I think that might be part of the reason that I have chosen not to include this book. I'm not feeling like I need to include it to get to a magical total that I'm feeling like I'm struggling to get to. I'm ahead of schedule with that at the moment, and there will be months that I read less and months that I read more, and that's just the ebb and flow of my life. So that's part of it. I don't feel the need to do it. I'm not pressuring myself to read a big number of books and therefore including lots of quick wins, for example. I guess I do include graphic novels because I think, to me, they have, I guess, they're interesting in the way that I want to talk about them. You know, like I enjoy talking about graphic novels when I read them on this channel. I enjoy writing reviews of them. And I just didn't feel, I guess that's also part of it, isn't it? And I'm kind of having this realization as I'm talking out loud that maybe part of it is I just didn't really want to write a review of this book. I didn't think there was anything I needed to say about it on social media or on this channel. So yeah, I think that's just my curiosity, I guess, about this. I'm just about to have a cat jump up. Here she is. And she's going to sit with me, aren't you? Maybe. Yeah. A shoulder cat moment. So I think we might leave it there. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you have books that you don't include when you are tracking your books in various locations? What are the reasons that you might not include something in your wrap-up? Oh, sorry, the world did not need to see my cat's bottom. So we might pop down, huh? All right. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. I'm curious to know your thoughts down in the comments. So let's have a chat down there about this topic. Like, how do you track? What do you and don't you track? Do you track everything that you read? Do you leave things out? Why? What is it for you that kind of constitutes like this? I'm including this. I'm not including this. I'm curious to know how that goes for other people as well. So let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.